This is the history of marijuana. The background. So, cannabis is a genus of flowering plants which includes the sativa and indica plant. It is used for psychoactive and medical purposes and contains cannabinoids such as tetra tetrahydrocannabinol, which is THC for short, or cannabinol, which is CBD. They both affect the body differently. The THC is what gives the brain that high and stuff, while the CBD is basically a lesser strand of that, which doesn't really provide the high, but still helps with like other problems such as body pain, insomnia, and other things like that. And it is used for smoking, vaping, and edible forms for recreational highs or medical symptom management. Its origins are about from 10,000 to 2000 BC. It goes back to about Central Asia, where the main use of it, they used the hemp version, which is basically the cannabis plants, but without all of that like concentrations of THC in it. And what they would do with this hemp is they would make ropes or nets out of it. And the plants had psychoactive effects, but they only discovered these psychoactive effects because of heating up the plant. Now, this early medicinal use, which is from 2700 to 1500 BC. We first see this when the Chinese Emperor Nung first documented the use of it being used medicinally. He described it being used for gout, malaria, pain, and constipation. And then it became integrated into early Ayurvedic medicine, which was what the Indians really used. It was described as one of the five sacred plants during that time for them, which was around 2000 to 1500 BC. The plant was used for anxiety relief, digestive issues, and spiritual and ritual purposes for them. And then the medical papyri, which is like Egyptians, they would use it for like inflammation and glaucoma, which was around 1500 BC. Now, the global spread in rituals, which was from 1000 BC to 1000 AD, you mainly see nomadic groups such as Scythians who played a huge role in spreading this cannabis across the westward front. The Greek historian Herodotus described Scythian funeral rites where they would use the cannabis seeds and throw them onto hot stones, which would produce this vapor that participants inhaled. It was also used in ancient Persia, but that was really just for like religious ceremonies tied to early Zoroastrian traditions. Um, Cannabis was deeply embedded into religious practices, though. Like the Hindus would use it a lot for things such as aid meditation, enhanced spiritual awareness, or relief suffering. It was also associated with Shiva, who is often linked to the use of bhang, which is what the Hindus would call a cannabis-infused drink. Cannabis would reach China, but they didn't really use it for like traditionally for like spiritual traditions or rituals or anything. They really still only use it for its medicinal purpose. And the big thing around this time is Huatua, who is often credited for making like a cannabis-based anesthetic that would be used during surgery, and it's one of the earliest known uses of anesthesia. Cannabis in Europe, they didn't really know what the use of cannabis was. Like the knowledge of it wasn't really that big. The only places that kind of knew of it was the Greek and Roman worlds. But there were physicians like Galen who noted its effects as he traveled through Central Asia, like studying it. In cannabis in Africa, cannabis would be introduced into Africa through trade routes and would be used for local healing processes, and that's all the Africans really used it for. Now, European introductions. During the 1800s, cannabis became mainstream in Europe because of the key figure William Brooke O'Shaughnessy, who was an Irish doctor who studied it in Africa. he would publish his findings and introduce the cannabis extract to the Western world. Physicians would quickly accept the cannabis as it helped treat chronic pain, migraines, epilepsy, and insomnia, with prominent medical figures like Jean Martin Carcott, who explored its uses for neurological disorders. Cannabis became widely available in the late 19th century across Europe and North America. Major pharmaceutical companies, including Merck & Co., would produce these cannabis-based tinctures and extracts and sell them. These products were typically taken orally or applied as liquid preparations. Several issues did arise, though. Despite its popularity, there were several issues with long-term use in medical dominance. The inconsistent dosing, which varied the potency of the extracts, and so it had different effects because of this inconsistent dosing, and the emergence of alternatives like morphine and aspirin, which were just much stronger in helping with these pains and migraines and stuff like that. And then we get into the modern area, which is 2000s to the present, where the discovery of the endocannabinoid system discovered how cannabis interacts with our brain and body systems. It was discovered that the cannabis compounds would interact with the brain and body to regulate pain, mood, appetite, and memory. And the key compounds that they studied were mainly THC and CBD. And like I said, THC is what's responsible for the psychoactive effects that people get when taking the cannabis, while the CBD is really just associated with the therapeutic benefits of just the pain relieving, helping with this mood and appetite and stuff. It became FDA approved in around 2018 to help with seizure disorders. And then we also, around this time, we start seeing states legalize it more. So California had a cannabis reform, which happened in 1996, which helped bring medical cannabis into the public for public consumption and stuff. States like Colorado and Washington would also legalize cannabis, which would help bring more attention to it in 2012 and have the states talking more about whether or not they should legalize its use or not. Now, there are still several problems around cannabis still. Like I said, the regulatories, each state has different laws on whether or not cannabis can be used or not, and what it can be used for. And there's a lot of public health concerns around cannabis for impaired driving, which is a big problem now, and then youth use and it affecting young adults and children. We do see big cultural shifts also around this time, where now that cannabis is more mainstream, it lost a lot of its earlier stigma, and it is now widely discussed in healthcare, politics, media, and it just reflects a broader shift in public attitudes now.